desperate were you in 1999?
Well, we were pretty desperate. We had 3 guys in an apartment in San Francisco with an idea that software was going to transform and move into something that we now call the cloud.
A good example. I love her. Oh yeah, I forgot.
I have this moment to talk to you. You know, it's a bit like the hotel business. You work hard to get the money to design and finish the building and make it perfect in every way to serve its purpose. And when it opens, it's a thrill to see it, and it's exciting to work in it. But let's be honest, the future of the hospital is 100% dependent upon the quality of service and care that is given to the patients who come here.
It's so loud. And make sure you take your behind to class today.
I do be going to class.
Lunch is not a class, shorty.
It is when you got the munchies.
See, that's why you such a dumbass.
Yep.
Steve, human capital around a little bit, Steve, because really is a fascinating question, I think, to turn human capital around a little bit, Steve, because this hotel,
Based upon what the fellows have told me, is based upon a simple idea. You build a bunch of buildings, you stack a whole bunch of folks in very close proximity to one another, in a very dense arrangement of structures. And then, because all of that population is upstairs, as they come down, they energize the podium level, which is the mezzanine and the ground floor, to such an extent that you can sell food, beverage, retail, casinos, anything you want, because there's so many people. So you put a lovely looking shopping center, casino, pool, bars, restaurants downstairs, and besides there's congestion in Las Vegas, everything is in one place. And that density creates a vortex of concentrated energy. That's the idea that has been promulgated, that is the underlying dynamic of the city center concept. It was also the underlying idea of Cotai for the Sands, and the Venetian and Sands Company in Macau. Now, what that seems to me, if I can look for a comparable, that is Times Square. That's Times Square. A lot of activity, tremendous buzz. Now at Times Square, they sell MP3 players, McDonald's hamburgers, and movie theaters. There's tremendous population, but the retail sales are, the most valuable property is not Times Square in New York. It's wherever there's a tree. It also reminds me that that concept is the underlying philosophy of the Ginza in Tokyo. The Ginza in Tokyo is not the most expensive property in Japan. It's somewhere else. This notion of focusing this energy at such an intense level, and I think it's going to open, and I'm told by my friends it's beautiful. It is a radical idea. 2,700 condominiums. It's a radical idea. It presented unto itself challenges never before seen in Las Vegas or any place else. Could you sell 2,700 condominiums? Well, the answer so far is no. Would people pay 2x per foot? And they signed contracts for 2x before they knew what x was, the cost. That's created a problem for them. They sold product at a fixed price without knowing what the cost was. That's given them some more heartburn. Nevertheless, the shopping center was done by David Rockwell, the interior design, I understand, is beautiful. The Aria Hotel was figured out and designed by a kid named Bob Baldwin that worked for me for 19 years, who was one of the smartest guys who worked for me. But basically, putting 20 million feet or 19 million feet on 65 acres is a very complicated thing to do. To give you an idea, the lady, that lovely woman who was so kind a moment ago, said she liked Bellagio. Bellagio's on 65 acres, the same as City Center. Bellagio is 5.8 million feet before they added the last 1,000 rooms, so let's call it 7. Bellagio is 7 million feet on 65 acres. Wynn is on 65 acres, and it's 6 million feet. If you add Encore, it's on 85 acres, and it's 9 million feet. Can you put 20 million feet on one piece of property and execute the exchange on a 24-hour basis of humans, customers, supplies, garbage out, supplies in, employees changing 3 times a day out, and new employees in, 13,000 of them. These are daunting challenges. There were questions about the scope of that project and its ambition from day one that I personally could not understand. But I've been educated by what others have done all my life, and City Center may be an education for me. But at the present moment, I have more questions than answers about that project. Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead.
What do you have to say about that?
How is Macau impacting Las Vegas? And the second part of the question I lost. And the fact that there's proliferation of gaming around the United States. Okay, well, we always thought that if there's gambling in California, that'd be end of Las Vegas, right? There's 150 Indian casinos in California in 07, and Las Vegas broke every existing record in room rate, casino win. The greatest days of Las Vegas with the most amount of rooms was when there were casinos in California. It seemed to create customers and provide sort of a farm system for... See, Las Vegas is sort of not about gambling anymore. It's about a whole experience, thank goodness, which is what riverboats are not. Riverboats are doing well now and are experiencing less of a drop in business than Las Vegas because they never had the retail and the high-end gambling to begin with to lose. So the local markets are doing okay. They have not had an effect on Las Vegas except to create business. China's effect on Las Vegas has been fabulous. We have said, and others have agreed, that the most terrific thing that ever happened in Las Vegas was that 3 Las Vegas companies were able to get concession agreements, which is really a contract with the government, to operate in the People's Republic of China in the special administrative region of Macau. We met an entire universe of mainland Chinese customers that we would never have met before. And they have made their way from Wynn Macau to Wynn Las Vegas, absolutely, before the recession. And it's been great for us. Terrific. So the proliferation of gaming has not been a bad thing for Las Vegas. Now, in this kind of a market, if you add the capacity of City Center, what will be its impact on the other MGM hotels and all the rest of the Strip? That's a very interesting question, which seems to me to have been a question that should have been answered before they broke ground, not after. Company that owns City Center owns 10 hotels in Las Vegas.
Damn.
For example, the 50s, the Sands Hotel. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and all that stuff. Nat King Cole, all those great stars of the last century. Run by a bunch of guys from the Copacabana in New York City, nightclub people and rowdies that had been running illegal casinos in the East Coast, who came to Las Vegas looking for a safe harbor where they could raise their children without being raided by the sheriff for running a crap game that was illegal. In the 60s, a guy showed up in Las Vegas, a roly-poly, pathological liar, a gifted and inspirational character named Jay Sarno, who was deeply affected by the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. The Fontainebleau Hotel is the foundation stud of destination resorts. The Novak family built that place in the 50s. It opened, I believe, in 54. So profoundly better and more imaginative than anything that had been built in Florida or anywhere else, that the hotel was the most successful place, any destination in the winter months. It didn't even have a sign on the building, and everybody wanted to go there. From Latin America, from Europe, they all came. The Jews and Italians from New York, every guy with money, every sporting life type of guy had to be at the Fontainebleau Hotel in January, February, and March. I was there. My family lived in Miami Beach while I was going to college, and they even had a cabana at the Fontainebleau. And I remember being very seriously affected by seeing this fella. There were two brothers, Joe and Ben Novak. Joe Novak died, but Ben Novak and his wife Bernice ended up being the proprietors in residence. And my parents and everybody else just talked about them. She was a beautiful, glamorous woman, and he was a bantam, Napoleonic kind of character. And I noticed as a young man, I was very impressionable in my adolescent years, and I formed an adolescent and naive notion watching Ben Novak strut around the hotel that owning a destination resort hotel was a pretty good way of going. I noticed that nobody ever got abused, an owner never got abused on his own property. It was good to be king if you were Ben Novak. That was that naive, immature notion I had in the late 50s as I was getting ready to graduate college and in my first year at the University of Pennsylvania. And as years later, when I got in that position, it turns out that the naive and adolescent notions were remarkably accurate. It's that good. So, that's what Las Vegas has been. And the more perfectly it responded to the appetite of society for a place that was imaginative and jazzy and action-packed, where you could go and stay up late, it's done well. Nothing's changed. Sure, the offers, it became a great retail city. No one expected that. Became a great culinary center. Nobody expected that. There were personalities along the way that contributed to these sort of significant developments. Wolfgang Puck came and opened the restaurants, and that started that. Retail stores started to bloom, and people, and all of a sudden we discovered amazingly that if people are on vacation, they like to shop. So we figured it out. Not overnight, but in a nice stepped evolutionary way For the past 40 or 50 years, Las Vegas has evolved to what it is today. With 150,000 rooms, that's a lot. Along the way, because of a man named Perry Thomas, public companies were allowed to come in, and that opened the door to public financing, and money became available in much larger amounts. In 1978, there's a man in this room named Stanley Zaks that's one of my best friends. He's chairman of Zenith National Insurance. And he was my buddy, and I was struggling with a $5 million company, the Golden Nugget downtown, to enter the market in Atlantic City, which required $100 million at least. And Stanley watched me. He was vice chairman of Hilton in those days, early days, and he said, look, you're not going to do this unless you meet my cousin, Mike. And Stanley, I had my leg in a cast. I had broken my foot running cross country, and I was on crutches in August 1978. And I went up to Drexel Burnham's offices on 1900 Avenue or 1700 Avenue of the Stars. And I went to a floor with an unmarked door. I walked in and Stanley was standing there with a short sleeve shirt in the hot summer months next to a young man with jeans and a Madras shirt who I thought was a clerk. And I came in under crutches. And the kid standing next to Stanley said, you look like you're very uncomfortable. Why don't you step into this conference room? Let's put your foot up. Can I get you, would you like a drink? He said, well, yes, I'd like a Diet Coke, thank you. And I said, well, they got very nice people here. And I looked at Stanley, I said, well, I can't wait to meet the guru, your cousin, Mike Milken. He said, you just did. He was 32 years old, he looked like he was about 18. That began my education in capital structure. I became Michael's first client in gaming, and that was very important to both of us. First of all, because my education began in capital structure, and that affected me. I was 36 at a very early age, and I learned the fundamental lessons that I've never forgotten, and I've conducted my business that way ever since. Michael was responsible. Perry Thomas and the Valley Bank were the first wave of development in Las Vegas. The town and the businesses outgrew the capacity of those banks to lend. And at that moment, thanks to Stanley, Michael Milken stepped up and Drexel Burnham took over the gaming industry, became sort of the show pony of that. Financing Atlantic City was more venture capital than finance, but we made promises that we kept. The funds in Boston, Putnam, Keystone, Fidelity, they got units deals on the mortgage, they got a good coupon plus warrants. They made money on the warrants. They made money on the stock. I redeemed the paper in 3 years and went to non-recourse financing in the subs, a practice we follow to this day, in order to get the longest maturities, the lowest interest rate, and the fewest covenants. Subsidiary financing, non-recourse to the parent. Maintain your flexibility in the parent. Keep the subs isolated and well-financed. Anyway, Milken took over financing of Las Vegas, and it bloomed. I introduced Mike and one of his colleagues, John Kissick, who was on my board, was in charge of the LA corporate finance operation. And Kissick, I introduced him to Circus. Mike picked up Circus. He picked up Bally and Caesars, et cetera, and the rest is history. $4 billion worth of financing took Las Vegas to another level. Okay, so here comes Las Vegas into the 90s, and Mirage comes along. We spent $600 million, over $600 million on in a town where no one had ever spent more than $200 million. I remember that showing the model of Mirage at a press conference when we unveiled this, the scale model. And everybody went, oh my God. And the price was, ridiculously orders of magnitude more expensive. But it was the first 3,000 room hotel built in one crack. It wasn't like we were just overpriced what was there before. This was a hotel that had tremendous additional facilities compared to anything that was in town. No hotel in the world had ever been built with 3,000 rooms from scratch, right out of the chute. I remember saying at that press conference, and the governor was there at that day, this will be a good investment for the shareholders of Golden Nugget. That was the name of the company in those days. It became known later as Mirage. This will be a good investment for the stockholders of my company. But what will be most important about the Mirage, I believe, is that it will show that Las Vegas is a safe place to invest over $500 million because of the stability of the political situation and the history of this market, which at that point was 25 or 30 years old. I did not realize how prophetic that statement was going to mean. I was purely lucky because the place opened in '89 on November 22nd, the anniversary of Kennedy's assassination. And everything after that was history. The 90s saw a boom in Las Vegas that was quite extraordinary. Hotel after hotel were built. Some of them very well conceived, some, as usual, not so well conceived. So we hit the millennium, and I think that's about enough history. How long is it going to last? I don't know. Neither do you. What can